is Lynn Thompson. I'm the president of Cold Steel Incorporated and the chief instructor of our knife fighting training division. Over the past 10 years, I've spent an enormous amount of time sparring with my training partners in an effort to develop a method of knife fighting where we can defeat our opponent without being cut or stabbed in the process. During this developmental period, I have borrowed heavily from the Filipino martial arts, including Lameko Eskrima, Western boxing, Western fencing, and Japanese kenjutsu, or sword fighting. In the end, what we came up with was a long-range fighting method that avoids close and middle range whenever possible and uses footwork, timing, rhythm, balance, speed, and strategy to defeat our opponent and not being cut or stabbed in the process. In the following instruction, we will cover the basics of long-range knife fighting. But before we get started, I want you to have a better understanding of the following. The first is there are 3 ranges that a knife fight can occur in. The second is the types of knives you may encounter in the hands of an opponent on the street. The third is why your fighting knife must be very sharp and very strong. And the fourth is what your actual goal should be if you ever encounter a knife in the hands of an opponent. The most dangerous range in which you can encounter a knife-wielding attacker is close range. At this extremely close distance, an opponent can cut or stab you without even taking a single step. They don't need to be a martial artist or a highly trained fighter. They don't need to be physically strong. They don't need a lot of stamina. They don't need perfect balance. They don't need the best reflexes in the world. All they need is 2 things: desire and speed. They don't have to know how to punch you. They don't know how to have to kick you. They don't know how to have to joint lock you or strangle you into submission. All they have to do is reach out and touch you with that razor sharp edge or point of their fighting knife to wound, maim, or kill you. This is the range we want to avoid at all costs, but we will deal with how to fight at this range in a future tape. Another dangerous range or position that we want to avoid is what I call medium range, where an opponent has to only take a single step to bridge the gap and attack you. At this close range, you only have a fraction of more reaction time than you do at close range to respond to an opponent's attack. So we want to avoid it as much as we can. However, in a future tape, we're going to teach you how to fight at medium range. The preferred distance in which to engage an opponent armed with a knife is what we call long range. At long range, there's at least 2 steps separating you and your attacker. At this distance, you can use your skill and knowledge to lure or trick him into making a mistake and putting himself in a position where you can cut or stab him with the minimal chance of him intercepting your motion or counterattacking. This is the range that we're going to concentrate on in this tape. Now I'd like to call Scott in, and I want to show you just how easy it is to conceal these mini knives and other knives as well. First of all, I ask Scott to turn around slowly. You can take a good look. He's got a nice sport coat on and vest, dress slacks, and nice loafers, shirt and tie. What do we have underneath your lapel, Scott? Got an Urban Pal on this side. What do you have up your sleeve? In his left sleeve, he has a Cullinan. It's a Scottish style boot knife. What do you got up your right sleeve?
Up my right sleeve?
He's got a super edge up his right sleeve. His right sleeve. But what other knives do you have on? I know you've got a few knives on.
Well, in here?
He's got a Safekeeper 2 push dagger in his right breast pocket. And what do you have in your left breast pocket? Oh, wow. Look at that. 6-inch Vaquero with an overall length of 13.5 inches. How'd you like to see that come out of somebody's breast pocket? But what else do you have on?
Under here we've got
another Urban Pal on his vest, on the button of his vest. You got anything else around that vest? What do you got in that tie?
in the tie.
Ooh, a Delta Dart. This is made out of Zytel, 43% glass-filled Zytel. And we've stabbed this thing through almost 1/2 inch thick leather. We may be doing some demonstrations of this in a little bit. So let's set that over there. What other knives do you have on?
Got a little surprise in here, just a small one.
Wow. He's got a Peacekeeper 2 boot knife underneath his armpit. What else you wearing?
Over here.
He's got a Desperado. It's a combination push dagger and boot knife. Wow. But I know that's not all.
Oh, no, we're not done yet. In the vest pocket.
Another Urban Pal.
In the waistband.
5-inch Voyager.
Let's see. What else? Oh, yeah, back here. Got our new.
Tie-Light. The 4-inch blade and a titanium handle. That isn't all. I know you're carrying more knives than that.
Oh, yeah. On the left side.
It's got a Recon 1. What do you have? What do you have on?
Oh, yeah, this. Well, little.
He had a little 3-inch Voyager clipped to the top of his vest in the back. I know there's got to be at least one more knife. Turn all the way around for the good folks. I think he's got one more surprise right here. He's got a nice spike. And these things are sharp. Very sharp. Let's see if the camera can come in here for a close-up and you can just see that bad boy shave. Sharp. So how many knives do we have?
Looks like we've got about 15, 16 knives there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 knives. That's a lot of knives. You got them all?
I think that's it.
That's it. Well, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
So there you can see how easy it is to conceal neck knives and other small knives like folding knives and boot knives. So just give you an idea of what you should be looking for on the street and what some of the possibilities are on these small knives. The reason your fighting knife must be strong is no one holds still when you try to stab them. That beautifully timed thrust that you were sure was going to hit home, oftentimes your opponent turns and squirms out of the way and you miss, and that thrust hits a concrete wall. It can hit a car door. It can hit a steel girder. There's lots of hard obstacles out there your point can encounter and break off. We found that if you break off 3/16 of an inch or even 1/4 of an inch of your knife, it's pretty much useless as a stabbing instrument. So it's imperative that it must be strong. Another reason your fighting knife must be strong is lots of times your cuts and slashes miss their target too and hit a hard object. When this happens, your edge can be dented or broken, or the whole knife can break in half. We've seen this happen. All cold steel knives are engineered to resist bending or breaking on their points or having their edges and blades break in cuts and slashes. Whatever knife you choose to use as your fighting knife, it must be strong. Here we have our scimitar with the black blade. I just want to open and shut it so that you know it's not a modified, specially modified knife. This is standard out of our production. It's still got its razor sharp edge, as you can see. This is a Chevy S10 Blazer or truck hood right here. We repainted it, and I'm going to stab this blade right through the hood of this car. Please do not try this at home. I have a lot of experience stabbing things. I have very strong hands and wrists, and I'm used to doing stuff of this nature. This is very, very dangerous, and it's not to be repeated in your house. Right through the hood. Now, here's what I want to show you that's cool about cold steel. Look at the integrity of that point. People say, you can take any knife and drive it through a car hood or a steel drum. Maybe, but what does the blade look like? And what does the point look like afterwards? That point is still terminally sharp, still useful. And while the edges are braided, doesn't quite shave anymore, but the rest of the blade still does. Took the edge off, but the point is still more than useful. And there's nothing wrong with this knife. I can still open and shut it. That's why we make our knives so strong. So that if you miss and hit a car door or hood or whatever, the blade doesn't fold on your hands. Here we have our new tie line. This has a titanium handle and an AUS 8A stainless steel blade in the classic stiletto design. Again, this knife is razor sharp. At the end of this video, I'll have no hair left on my arm, but if the camera can come in here, I'll give him a second to come in. I just want to show how sharp this knife is. Still razor sharp. You can see that here. Again, I want to stress, please don't do this at home. Look at that. Still puncturing after 5 hits right through the steel door. If you came in here for a close-up, I don't know if our overhead camera can get it or not, but you can see daylight right through those holes, all the way through that hood. And you still have a useful sharp point. It's been blunted, I'll admit, a tiny bit, but not very much. Not anywhere near enough to keep it from penetrating. And the lock didn't move. Perfect integrity of the lock. This is what you want in a tactical folder. We've got some more to show you. Now I want to show you what our 5-inch Voyager with the Tanto point can do. This has a rocker lock. It's a very strong lock. It's held up to 120 pounds in our test. This is a standard knife right out of the box. Again, camera can come in here. I just shaved all that hair off my arm with it. Still razor sharp. And I'm going to use this to go through the car door too. There you can see the blade went right through the door, and you have still an awful lot of integrity to that point. Still a useful point after going through all that metal. And the lock worked really well. Didn't close on my hands. Please don't try this with lesser knives. Don't try this with our competitors' knives. Your fingers are irreplaceable like your eyes. They can't be easily reattached. The next requirement of a fighting knife in our long-range knife fighting method is it must be very sharp. It has to have the length, weight, and edge geometry to stop an incoming blow with one stroke. Never, ever use your fighting knife for utility purposes. Don't ever cut string or open boxes with it. Don't loan it to friends. Don't let anyone else handle it. Always keep it pristine. It must be sharp enough and to be as effective as possible at all times. Here's a test that we found to be reliable in calculating whether or not your knife is sharp enough for combat. What you do is you simply shave the hair from your arm. Maybe the camera can come in here and get a close-up as I shave. If your knife will shave hair like that, it's sharp enough to be relied on to disable an opponent's weapon arm with a single stroke. Another reason that your fighting knife must be sharp is it gives you a huge advantage in the knife fight against an opponent that has a blade that maybe isn't as sharp. Here's an illustration from a friend of mine's past. Terry Register grew up in North Florida. His grandfather owned a big slaughterhouse. One day, there's two guys that worked there got into a knife fight. These guys hated each other's guts, and there was a lot of bad blood. And one day, out came the knives, and they went at it. Well, when the fur quit flying, one man was laying there, cut to ribbons, and the other man was kind of stunned and in a daze. And as the other workers were administering first aid to the man that was really severely injured, Terry approached the apparent winner of the knife fight and said, "Hey, I saw you get cut. I saw him hit you with that blade several times." And he says, "What happened? Why aren't you bleeding?" So they took off his Levi jacket and they pulled up his t-shirt. And underneath he had red wheals and a few lacerations where the other opponent's knife had cut through the jacket, but it wasn't sharp enough to bite into the skin and really do any damage. So this man was the victor, not because he had greater skill, it was because he had a razor sharp knife. Every night when he got done with work, he went home and he sharpened his knife. It was like a straight razor. His opponent's knife was used every day for work around the slaughterhouse, and when he pulled it out to fight with, it was dull. So if there's a moral that you can learn to this story is, one, don't get in knife fights, and two, if you do, make sure your knife is razor sharp because your opponent's isn't likely to be. Basically, all we are as human beings is meat and bone. And we have a good-sized piece of meat here, and I want to show you how easy it is to pierce this meat with a little knife that only weighs ½ an ounce. Now this Super Edge has a 2-inch blade. I'm just going to pinch it between my thumb and my index finger. I want you to see this. Look at that, penetrate that meat. You see that, the camera see that? Full penetration effortlessly. That's all we are, a piece of meat. Very, very easy to do. Now I want to show you the cutting potential of this little knife. So I'm just going to get this to hold still like this for a second, and I'm going to make a moderate cut. We'll come over here and we'll open that up, and you can see what that cut did. We'll try another one here on this side here. Again, that's just with the flick of my wrist, and it's opening up that meat. Let's try a little longer cut. There we go. Look at that. A good 2 inches deep, almost the full length of the knife, and about 4.5 inches long, maybe 5 inches long, with just a flick of your wrist like that. That's a lot of cutting power for a little diminutive knife like this that you can conceal almost anywhere in your person. Now I'd like to show you what a really small, tiny push dagger can do. Earlier you saw Scott concealing quite a few of these little knives, and I want to show you what they're capable of. This again weighs just a fraction of an ounce. It goes between your fingers like this, and it doesn't take much to penetrate that meat. Look at this. Easily, easily, easily. Now I want to show you what the cutting power of this little knife. Imagine that's your face, and I just cut it like that, and it just splits it open. We'll try another one right in here. See the cut that made? That's a bad cut. You can just see those opening up that meat. The first tactical folder I wanted to make you aware of is its cutting power is our S-shaped blade. We call this a Nogales clip point, in our El Lobo size, which is a 3-inch blade, and our El Hombre, which is a 4-inch blade. This has got a really beautifully designed edge. It forms an S in its curvature, and it's designed to get all of the edge through the target. I'm going to have Felix come out, and I'm going to demonstrate how this blade shape coincides to the human arm. When Felix is holding his knife arm up here like this, and I make contact with this El Lobo, you'll see this curve right here fit right into his arm. That leaves this hump to be pulled through. All I have to do now is pull, and I get a massively deep cut. And I'm going to show what this looks like on the meat here. Just with a moderate cut like that. And I take off a hunk of meat, like that. It doesn't take much to cut that off. That's with a little 3-inch blade. Moving up to the 4-inch blade, we're going to get a longer, deeper cut, like that. Now remember, this is your bicep. That's as thick as most people's bicep, that piece of meat. So you get an opportunity and you come in and you make a cut like that, and you've totally disabled an arm. And that's what you need a really strong, sharp knife for it. You'd have to be able to make those debilitating cuts with a folding knife. Next thing I'm going to show is our scimitar. This has got the black blade. It's got Teflon coating on it, and it makes it cut really well. That Teflon makes it slick, and also makes it hard to see at night. That's a real advantage of a black blade. At night, it's very, very difficult to see this blade moving. And I just want to show what this knife can do. Look at the cut that thing opened up. Just spin it around here. That's that cut it made. Pretty phenomenal cut. And there, it cut all the meat off with one stroke. This is our new Recon 1. It's got a 4-inch clip point blade with a Teflon coating. It's all black. There's another knife that's really hard to see it at night. It really disappears. It's really hard to track. And we've got a nice thick new piece of meat here. I'm just going to show you what a very moderate cut will do. Look at that. Didn't put any real body weight in it, just used mostly my wrist. And I got an enormously deep cut in a thick piece of meat. Again, that's bigger than your bicep. That's an immediate debilitating cut. You can't take a cut like that and continue to fight with that arm. Now, the next knife I want to show is our triple action. It's got extremely strong lock. It's almost impossible to overcome. And it's the only knife other than a balisong where you can have two edges. This has got two edges and they're very, very sharp. And again, I'm going to show you what a double-edged 4-inch blade can do. Let me just spread that for you. There's the cut. That's how deep that cut went. It's about 6 inches long and almost 3 inches deep with a very moderate stroke. Again, that's a debilitating cut. Now I want to move up to a little bit longer blade. Here we've got our 5-inch Voyager. This is really a terrific tactical folder. The lock is held up to 120 pounds. When we put this knife in a vise and we put the weight on the end, it's held up to 120 pounds. It's a very strong knife, very effective. A lot of our employees use this knife, and it's really a favorite around here. I want to show you what a 5-inch blade will do. I'm going to cut right here. Look at the cut that made. Spin it around. Look at that. Again, you saw I didn't really load up, put a tremendous amount of power over that cut, but it's really scary what a 5-inch blade will do. But if you think that's bad, let's look what a 6-inch folder will do. This is our Vaquero Grande. It's got 13 inches overall length and a 6-inch blade with that Nogales clip point. Look at that, my friends. That almost cut your thigh in half if that hit you. It's a really, really debilitating cut. This is what you need in a folding knife. If you're going to carry a tactical folder, it has to have the cutting power. Most of them don't. But Cold Steel knives are designed so that with one stroke, you can stop your opponent. And last, I'm going to show you what our little 4-inch gun sight can do. This is another really popular knife. Now this has got a tanto point on it. This means it has a secondary point right here. I want to show you, we're going to go over a snap cut a little later, but I want to find a nice piece of meat here. And I'll just show you what a snap cut can do. There we go, right in here. Try it a little slower. There's one, there's a good one. Right here. Just with the tip of the knife, look at the cut it's making. I'm not using a lot of pressure or motion or anything. Look at the cuts it's making in the meat like that, right there. Those are horrible. That'll cut your thumb off. That'll cut your fingers off. Really debilitating. Look at that. Look at that with a little snap like that. You need to have a lot of respect for even a tactical folder. They're not the very best when it comes to a fighting knife, but they're nothing to be scorned or turn your nose up at either. With the advent of the tactical folder, the boot knife has really slipped in popularity in the last 10 years. I think this is a real shame because the boot knife is far more effective than any tactical folder or any other knife we've discussed so far. It's small enough to be concealed, and it's light enough to carry all day long, and it's really effective. With a 5-inch blade, it's enough to stop an incoming knife hand or arm with a single stroke. Its only disadvantages are it's not as concealable as a tactical folder or a neck knife or a mini knife, and it doesn't have the massive cutting power of a fixed blade, full-size fighter, or a really big knife like a Bowie or a Kukri. I want to show you just what the boot knife is capable of so that you can consider this in your choice of what knife to carry for your own defense. First one I want to show is our Peacekeeper 2. This has a 5.5-inch blade and about a 4-inch handle. And what we have here is a rack of pork ribs. Now, this simulates the human rib cage. And I want to show just how easy it is. Whenever you're going to stab through the rib cage, you always want to turn your blade so it's parallel with the ribs themselves. So all you have to do is stick it through. See how easy that goes through? When you hit a bone, a rib bone, you'll just bounce off, like I did there, and come back for your next thrust and go right in again. Very, very easy to do. I'll give you a little example of the cutting power of this. Look at that. I split all those ribs for, what, 12, 13 inches with one stroke. That's pretty impressive cutting power for a small knife like this. Here we have a very large piece of meat. It's covered in a plastic bag, a t-shirt, a dress shirt, and a leather jacket. I'm going to show you what a single stroke from a big knife like this Trailmaster can do. Now don't get confused. Not all big knives have this type of cutting power. They have to have the right edge geometry and blade cross section and weight and the skill of the user. But watch what this knife can do. That's one moderate stroke. There I used just the tip. Look at the cut that made. Just the tip. The full length of the blade and more, and